Today we're talking with Dr. Haley Perry from Elite Eye Care in Arden, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville. Dr. Perry, thanks for taking some time out to join me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So we were talking a little bit before the show here about kind of your experience of, getting into practice ownership. And I thought it was kind of intriguing that started to practice, bought another one to save one, and ended up with just the one that you had purchased, right? How long ago, like I presume the initial practice that is not in existence anymore came first. How long did you have that before you decided to acquire the practice that you have now?
Well, I graduated in 2009 and then went into practice with a guy in my hometown, which is about an hour away from here.
Hmm.
He had a satellite clinic that was here in Asheville. And I acquired that from him around 2011. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. Um, It was way off the beaten path. The practice had been seeing patients 1 day a week. My way of practicing did not align with that doctor's way of practicing. And so in my opinion, I feel like perhaps those patients were being seen too many times. And whereas I didn't think that was necessarily needed. And then suddenly the practice of the value of the practice plummeted because of how I practice. That's not something that I knew to look for when I bought a practice, was to look at these charts and see, does this seem reasonable or not? So that practice was not doing well. Like I said, it was basically in the woods, way off the beaten path. It was not doing well at all. And so I had the opportunity to buy a second practice, which is really sort of a miracle that all that worked out financially for me, as far as the bank taking a leap of faith with me. But bought this practice 2 years later. So I was solo with that practice for 2 years, and then bought this second practice, and then tried to keep both of them going for 2 years after that. And then in realizing that even though they were 8 country miles apart, meaning like there was nothing between here and there, that people that lived in the middle had to go somewhere, it made so much more sense for patients to come here on this very busy road where I am, because they were likely coming by anyway to go shopping, etc. And so in 2016, I closed the doors of the first practice and moved everyone to this one.
Sometimes we have like a really hard time, just like humans in general, but specifically business owners, about making decisions like that in terms of when is the right time to kind of pull the plug, so to speak, or that I always refer to it as like drawing a line in the sand. Like we've had enough of this, and now we need to move on. I mean, what other kind of? I mean, I'm sure trying to run two practices and one of them struggling was having a big impact, like negative impact on you personally, as well as just financially speaking, just trying to keep it afloat, right?
For sure. Very stressful. Very
Yeah, a
stressful.
few years back now. But do you remember like anything else for a decision point of just, definitely the time? Because I think a lot of times practice owners, business owners, even in general, will have this urge to like hang on to it before they make the decision to cut. But do you remember any other aspects of that?
Well, for sure. Well, that's where, like, I think I'd said this to you before, but like, as doctors, we're very driven people, and we dream of being a doctor, and then you set the goal of being the doctor, and you succeed at doing that, and then suddenly you're thrown into this situation where you have been so successful all along, right? Like, goal set, goal insight, going for that goal, hitting the goal, and then all of a sudden you're going to call me a failure, and I'm going to have to close something because I couldn't like make it work. And you
Mhm.
definitely have this mentality of like, I will grind, like I will figure this out, I will keep going. And I definitely should have probably closed it 2 years before I did, but that mentality of just not wanting to give up, which I think is so valuable, right? Like, nobody wants to be like laying down and just giving up, but I'm gonna call it a pivot and not a failure.
No, I think that's great. And in hindsight, we always, I think we do that to ourselves too a lot. We always go back and say, oh, we should have done it this way. But like, I think the thing that we can take away with that is you're at where you're at now and it's working out now, right? And you're in a much better spot. So it was, you can give yourself a little little leeway there and just be like, it was exactly what needed to happen and you made the right choice.
That's so
So I
true.
think that's fascinating. Um, Another thing we were talking about just a little bit ago was your involvement. Chris, you're a Vision Source practice and you're administrator there. And you had recently taught some folks with your experiences there through Vision Source with using AI in your practice and your life. And that's such a topical thing right now. We're seemingly new AI tools coming out all the time. Tell us a little bit about how you're using it, because I think a lot of people just hear these stories of, either people embedding them into certain tools, but the big stories that I always hear are just like, the marketers have definitely run away with, trying to do a lot in there, but I think you have a little bit of different approach.
I started really heavily using, I mean, I started using it last year because I really think that it was just a foreign concept to me before that. But I realized that I could go to ChatGPT and use it for free. So I started playing around with it, and then I realized all of the different things that I could do with it. And so this year for my practice, and so my birthday is December 31st. And so I'm really big on setting New Year's resolutions because my birth year, follows like a regular year. And so, like, I'm 41. So I'm like, okay, what's my 41st year going to look like, and what am I going to do this year? And so just setting some like personal goals with that about, what things that I wanted to achieve for me. And then, so using it to do that, creating a personal development plan for you, creating a business plan. You can do anything with ChatGPT. I love it so much. But, so anyway, doing personal goals for me, and then how does it look for my business to then translate to creating or working towards those goals that I have for my life? And then also in that vein, like improving the lives of my employees, I ended up creating this. One document's 40 pages, and I think the other one was 90 pages. I've worked with two, but basically copying and pasting stuff in from ChatGPT of things that it said I needed to work on, and going in step by step and cutting that out, and then working on that step in ChatGPT and going back. And like I said, it created this 90-page document of this business development plan for my business based
Wow.
on what I wanted for my life. And then being able to use that and assigning it to different office members, and what does it look like for each month. And um, anyway, really narrowing it down of how do we want to grow this year? How do we want to grow in the next 3 years? What does it look like in 10 years? That's where I've really used it to vision cast, and then
Mm.
also using it to do data analytics of my practice, and where we are now versus where do we want to go, and then give me ideas of how to get there. That's how I'm using Chat GPT. So I'm not using it. Not, I mean, of course, then I can use it to create a marketing plan based on all of that, and then you can do emails and blog posts. I think that's what people mostly think that it's for, but I really am using it for everything.
It's like your business partner and coach all in one. It's like, I just love it as like a brainstorming tool to get the wheels spinning on those different, things like what you're talking about, whether it's some sort of plan development, um, for sure. So you had a great quote earlier. I wrote it down before we started recording, which was, and you've alluded to it a little bit, but the quote I heard when you were talking about doctors being really good at setting goals, and then with some of us may forget how to dream a bit, and we start just getting into these cycles of practice ownership and coming in every day and doing similar things, and it just starts to leads to burnout for some folks, right? Especially if they're not either controlling their or developing their staff so that they can get back their time, and as well as that all ties in with financial rewards and performance of the practice as well. But talk a little bit about that, because I mean it's tied into the type of goals and things you're developing with Chat GPT and with AI. Is that goal setting regimen, is that something you're really leaning on?
I'm a little bit ADD, a little bit. I'm definitely a visionary. It helps me kind of narrow the focus some.
Mm.
Um, but that's the thing. You're totally right. Like I definitely got into this with everything that I went through in 2014 to 2016, and all of the burnout that came from the grind, right, of trying to
Mhm.
save that one practice. And then um, things were getting really, we're improving here. And then 2020 happened. 2020 was going to be my year to hit a million, and then bam, everything slammed shut.
Mm.
And then and then this it's been this slow incremental growth, slowly as we open back up again. Um, but that's where right this second, this year with my goals, what I wanted to do was how do I, with getting back to like, what do I want to do for my life and what do I want my 41st year to look like? One of the things that I wanted to be able to do was work more on this business instead of in this business. How can we do that? Help me brainstorm that. And one thing I teach people how to use AI in their optometric practices. And one of the things that I say is you do have to talk to it like it's a friend. Just like I have to have the idea first, and I have to be smart enough to know kind of where I want this idea to go. And then I have
Mm,
to ask it an intelligent question and for it to give me an intelligent answer. And so
mm,
that's where in asking it like some questions about business growth and development, et cetera, and scheduling and brainstorming with that, we were able to take my schedule, which was 3 days a week. And one of those days was also seeing patients with an associate doctor. Um, and my staff was just burnt out on that day. Like we're just slammed, like two doctors throwing patients at them at the same time. And so we consolidated my 3 days into a 2-day work week where I'm still here in the office. This is one of those days where I'm doing administrative stuff. It allows me to
okay.
talk to people about AI. That was one of my goals was I want to teach people how to use this because I'm really passionate about, especially private practice optometry and just okay. Side note, thinking about how big corporations use AI to grow their corporations. We are little mini CEOs of our practices. And so if we are not using AI to also help grow our practices, then we are going to fall behind where these big like corporations are going to keep going further. So that's where I'm really passionate about it. And so
Mhm.
and in doing that, in utilizing it in this way, I'm now seeing patients 2 days a week. I'm able to see patients more often because AI helped us utilize like the perfect schedule to where my staff don't get burned out. They love the schedule. I'm obviously able to be more available to do other things like this. It's already been an amazing year. Our growth this year because of what we're doing is far exceeding things that we've done in the past. I had the idea of like I will create a course and I will show people how to use this online.
Mhm.
Except I did that and then man, creating a course is really hard. Like the dynamics of navigating internet and platforms and all that different. Those are all I'm not intelligent enough to ask it an intelligent question when it comes to that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So just in April, I partnered with Dr. Chris Wolf, who runs iCode Education, and so it is now hosted on his platform. So I do have a course
Okay.
that is out there, but it is under iCode Education's platform now.
I know just from like the little bit we talked and reviewing everything, you had your journey in optometry started when you were younger. This happened for you pretty early on, right? Besides medical school and or optometry school, and besides running the two practices, like have there been any other like really impactful moments or challenges that you've overcome, and now you're on the other side of it?
I can think of two things. I had an office manager when I started here, when I purchased this practice, and she was with me, but left in 2020. I had this thought, or I felt at the time that I couldn't afford to hire anyone to
Mm,
do that because it's 2020. Like I'm just trying to like survive. I ran this practice for 2 years without an office manager until one of my staff members was basically like, "You need an office manager, and if you don't let me do this, I'm leaving." And I was just this moment of like, "Oh my gosh, please don't leave. Okay, I will figure this out. I'll figure out how I can afford to pay an office manager, et cetera." And so, in doing that, I just realized how difficult that is to try to carry that. I think a lot of doctors try that are probably especially new in practice. That's a leap of faith to be able to trust all your cards to somebody to do that.
yeah.
But definitely well worth it because you were doctors first, business owners like way second. And so to be able to have somebody there to keep a heartbeat of your business is, I think, so important.
Mhm.
So that's number one. And then number two, the second thing I can think of is like hiring an associate doctor to work, giving
Mm,
up a day and having another doctor work in your place so that um, you can work on your business instead of in it. My friend Ted McElroy, he has a podcast too, and I was on that once. Really sort of in the thick of being like this crazy, like trying to be office manager and doctor and doing all the things. And he was like, "You have a glorified job. You don't own a business. You have just a
mhm.
glorified job." And that hit me so hard. So After that is like I sort of made the decision of like I will figure out how to not make this a glorified job. Like I really want this business to work for me instead of me just constantly working for it.
How long have you had an associate doctor working with you?
She has been with me now since 2022, so for 2 years. So,
Okay.
so 2016 is when I closed the first practice.
Yeah,
Um,
but you already had acquired this one by that time.
yeah, 2020 lost my office manager. 2022 hired the office manager, and then here she is looking at all of the numbers now because I, have
Mm,
somebody to do that, and she's basically like, "This would make sense for you to hire an associate. Like you need an associate."
yeah.
And then me over here freaking out, like, "Can I afford an associate?" Just like I was with hiring an office manager again.
I'd ask everybody, like, what is the one like biggest piece of advice you have for others who are maybe not quite as far along in their journey of independent optometry and working towards ownership? What's your biggest piece of advice for them moving forward?
I think that especially for young people that are starting out in practice in solo practice, it's easy to compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. And there's a lot of chest beating that happens when you get a bunch of practice owners together around at state society meetings, etc. And so I think it's important to know that everybody really struggles, and the struggle really does season you to become who you are. And so I think the struggle is a part of the story. And so it's important to keep going. I can tell you how many times have I wanted to give up and quit, and I just kept going, and it's all been worth it. And there are other people out there that would love to talk to you about it, to help you, give you advice. Sometimes you do have to sort of lay all your cards out there. Like I have had to close a business, and that was really hard, and my pride really took a hit. But I had some people in my life at the time that really poured into me to kind of help encourage me. And so find a mentor, ask them lots of questions, and it's going to be okay.
Haley, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and enjoy talking with you. And I hope to our paths will cross again sometime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're very welcome.